So at the very beginning, you mentioned that there's the combination of the context window expansion, the agents, and the text to action is going to have unimaginable impacts. First of all, why is the combination important? And second of all, I know that you're not like a crystal ball and you can't necessarily tell the future, but why do you think it's beyond anything that we could imagine?
I think largely because the context window allows you to solve the problem of recency. The current models take a year to train, roughly 18 months, 6 months of preparation, 6 months of training, 6 months of fine tuning. So they're always out of date. Context window, you can feed what happened. Like you can ask it questions about the Hamas-Israel war, right, in a context. That's very powerful. It becomes current like Google. In the case of agents, I'll give you an example. I set up a foundation, which is funding a nonprofit, which starts, I don't know if there's chemists in the room. I don't really understand chemistry. There's a tool called ChemCrow, C-R-O-W, which was an LLM-based system that learned chemistry. And what they do is they run it to generate chemistry hypotheses about proteins, and then they have a lab which runs the tests overnight, and then it learns. That's a huge accelerant in chemistry, material science, and so forth. So that's an agent model. And I think the text to action can be understood by just having a lot of cheap programmers, right? And I don't think we understand what happens, and this is, again, your area of expertise, what happens when everyone has their own programmer. And I'm not talking about turning on and off the lights. I imagine, another example, for some reason you don't like Google. So you say, build me a Google competitor. Yeah, you personally, you don't build me a Google competitor, search the web, build a UI, make a good copy, add generative AI in an interesting way, do it in 30 seconds, and see if it works, right? So a lot of people believe that the incumbents, including Google, are vulnerable to this kind of an attack. Now, we'll see.
There were a bunch of questions that were sent over by Slido. I want to give, some of them were upvoted. So here's one. We talked a little bit about this last year. How can we stop AI from influencing public opinion, misinformation, especially during the upcoming election? What are the short and long-term solutions from?
Most of the misinformation in this upcoming election and globally will be on social media. And the social media companies are not organized well enough to police it. If you look at TikTok, for example, there are lots of accusations that TikTok is favoring one kind of misinformation over another. And there are many people who claim without proof that I'm aware of that the Chinese are forcing them to do it. I think we have a mess here. And the country's going to have to learn critical thinking. That may be an impossible challenge for the US. But the fact that somebody told you something does not mean that it's true.
Well, could it go too far the other way, that there's things that really are true and nobody believes anymore? You get, some people call it epistemological crisis, that now, Elon says, no, I never did that. Prove it.
Well, let's use Donald Trump.
Okay.
Look, I think we have a trust problem in our society. Democracies can fail. And I think that the greatest threat to democracy is misinformation, because we're going to get really good at it. When I managed YouTube, the biggest problems we had on YouTube were that people would upload false videos and people would die as a result. And we had a no-death policy. Shocking. And it was just horrendous to try to address this. Yeah. And this is before generative AI. I don't have a good answer.
One technical is not an answer, but one thing that seems like it could mitigate that, I don't understand why it's more widely used, is public key authentication. That when Joe Biden speaks, why isn't it digitally signed like SSL is? Or when that celebrities or public figures or others, couldn't they have a public key? Yeah,
it's a form of public key, and then some form of certainty of knowing how the system.
When I send my credit card to Amazon, I know it's Amazon.
So I wrote a paper and published it with Jonathan Haidt, who's the one working on the anxiety generation stuff. It had exactly zero impact. And he's a very good communicator. I probably am not. So my conclusion was that the system is not organized to do what you said.
You had a paper advocating what we did, that
advocating
approach?
your proposal.
Okay, my proposal.
No, what you said.
Yeah, right.
And my conclusion is the CEOs in general, are maximizing revenue. To maximize revenue, you maximize engagement. To maximize engagement, you maximize outrage. The algorithms choose outrage because that generates more revenue, right? Therefore, there's a bias to favor crazy stuff. And on all sides. I'm not making a partisan statement here. That's a problem. That's got to get addressed. In a democracy, and my solution to TikTok, we talked about this earlier privately, is when I was a boy, there was something called the equal time rule. Because TikTok is really not social media, it's really television, right? There's a programmer making you, the numbers, by the way, are 90 minutes a day, 200 TikTok videos per TikTok user in the United States. It's a lot, right? So, and the government is not going to do the equal time rule, but it's the right thing to do. Some form of balance that is required.